Hello and welcome back to another Giant Slayer TFT ranked meta video. Our analysts are here to go through the 1022 meta for each stage of the game. We'll cover leveling, economy, items, and a few compositions for the early, mid, and late game. Overall, the meta has several viable compositions, though there's certainly a few that stick out above the rest, such as Talent and Ashe. Let's go ahead and get started. But before we begin, please don't forget to click the links in our description. Give your support to everyone who helped make this video happen. We host many TFT tournaments with plenty of exciting content to come, so be sure to also follow our Giant Slayer TFT social media pages. Alright, let's get back to the video. Before we dive into the various stages of the game, let's first talk about items. A lot of the meta currently revolves around finding items for Ashe and Talon, which does narrow down the available options. And in general, those items can be used by the majority of other viable carry options, so your overall goal is to secure at least one of those items to give yourself the most amount of options. Let's go over each component, what meta items you can build them into, and what priority they have on the beginning carousel. First up is Sword. Sword builds into a lot of meta items such as Infinity Edge, Guardian Angel, Zeke's, and even Deathblade. Primarily, you're going to see Infinity Edge as the highest priority because it's really good for both Talon and Ashe. This means in terms of carousel priority, securing an early sword is going to open up a lot of options for you. Another component that's high priority is Glove. Glove, of course, is used as the second component to make Infinity Edge. Besides that, you can use it for Quicksilver, Trapclaw, Last Whisper, and Hand of Justice. But the top two items that you're going to want a glove for are IE and Quicksilver. Quicksilver is especially important for a carry, but it's more of a mid to late game item, meaning you're going to want to use Glove early on for the Infinity Edge. And the last high priority component is Chain Vest. Mainly because the defensive items it builds into are incredibly useful, such as Guardian Angel, Sunfire Cape, and Bramble Vest. In addition to those, you can also look to make a locket to help win early game rounds. Of all those items, the best is definitely Guardian Angel, which is a great item for Talon, as well as other carries like Riven. Next, let's go over the middle priority components, Rod and Tear. Rod is great for Morellonomicon, Locket, and Ludens. Morellonomicon, despite not being that great of an item, is a must-have when running Dazzler champions like Ezreal or Morgana. Applying both Dazzler and healing reduction to a wide amount of enemy champions is immensely valuable. Locket, as mentioned earlier, is an okay item to slant one of in the early game, and Ludens is a niche item that opens up the possibility of running a Nami composition. Tears are also useful for blue buff, Ludens, and most importantly, Chalice. Chalice was nerfed in the Morgana hotfix, but it's still a top tier aura item, especially on secondary champions like Morgana or Kindred. Ludens is a niche item for Nami, and blue buff can be tossed onto lots of champions like Kindred, Riven, or Ezreal. Tiers tend to be more contested in general, so if you really want to secure one, it may be a good idea to go for it on early carousels. And lastly, we have the lowest priority components, Bow, Belt, and Cloak. Bow and Belt aren't terrible, especially since the two combined make a ZZ Rot portal, which is one of the better utility items currently. But overall, none of these components are necessities or that contested, so you should be able to secure them at some point during the carousel rounds if you really need them. Alright, now that we're done with items, let's move on to the various stages of the game, starting with the early game. The early game goes from stage 1 until the early rounds of stage 3. Since we've already talked about the beginning carousel, let's start with stage 1. Stage 1, as usual, is just about picking up pairs presented to you in the shop. The more golds you're given as drops, the more options you have, but in general, you should try to aim for pairs, as that's the best way to get an early 2-star champion. If you're ever presented with a chosen champion, you should definitely purchase it. You don't necessarily have to keep it during stage 2, but oftentimes having an early chosen is what saves you the most amount of health. If you're not given the option for one, don't worry, as one will always appear in your shop during stage 2. Since we're already talking about it, let's move on to stage 2. During this stage, you have a few goals to keep in mind. First, winning rounds should be your focus. Winning means extra gold, the ability to get started on a win streak, and most importantly, not losing health. There is definitely RNG when it comes to whether or not you can win, but generally 2-starring your units when possible and playing a chosen champion is enough to do well. From there, you can slam early items like Sunfire Cape or Locket to give yourself an extra edge. Another important part of early stage 2 is leveling to 4. While you can wait to naturally level, it's generally best to spend the gold to do it early, as pushing levels increases your odds of hitting 3-cost champions and later on 4-cost champions. So make sure you're leveling on either 2-1 or 2-2. After the carousel round, you will level again on 2-5, although pre-leveling is fine to do at the end of 2-3. The latter half of Stage 2 is mainly about maintaining the streak you have, whether it's a win or a loss streak, as you want to have the highest streak you can going into Krugs. Either during or the round after Krugs, you can choose to sell your early chosen to have more options in Stage 3. Next, let's talk about the mid-game, beginning with Stage 3. Mid-game also includes Stage 4 and the early parts of Stage 5. The first few rounds of Stage 3 is still technically the early game, but basically the early game ends when players are leveling to 6. The standard timing to do so is around 3-2. You can do it earlier if you're win streaking and want to push an advantage, or slightly later if you're near 50 gold and want to hit the threshold before slow leveling. But the goal is to be level 6 no later than 3-5. Honestly, Stage 3 is really skippable in terms of what you're doing. All you need to worry about is leveling to 6 and saving your gold. Sure, you can pick up a new chosen if you sold your early game one, especially if you can pick up a 3-cost chosen. But overall, the game doesn't matter as much until level 7, which is in Stage 4. So in that case, it's time to move on and talk about Stage 4. This is where the game is essentially decided, as practically everyone is going to roll during this stage and try to find a 4-cost carry. Those that hit it easily will gain a huge advantage, while any that low roll will be in a much harder position to play from. First though, let's focus on those that want to do it right away on 4-1. This is right after Wolves, and you will want to level to 7 here. It is fine to level to 7 before this, but keep in mind, having as much gold as you can is important for rolling down, so don't level early if it's going to cost you too much gold. Back to rolling on 4-1. What you're looking for is a direction for your composition. Of course, items do dictate this a bit, but in general, play what the game gives you. Currently, the top meta champions to look for are Talon and Ashe. Overall, though, you can begin buying all the 4-cost champions you find, as they are the key to putting together a viable comp right now. In addition to that, look for supporting champions like Janna, Lux, Aurelia, and specific 5-cost champions like Ezreal, Yone, and Azir. If you find Talon, try to pick up other Enlightened champions and pair them with Adepts and Dazzlers. If you're playing Ashe, look to add in additional Hunter units like Kindred and Warwick while adding a frontline to protect the Ashe. That can be Brawlers, Elderwoods, or even just Adept champions. Adept is overall one of the best splash traits, so if you can secure a Shen 2 when rolling, try to fit him and Aurelia into your build. This also makes it easy to splash in Mystic. From there, regardless of what build you're playing, just fill in the gaps with whatever synergies or champions you need. Besides Ashe and Talon, you can play Riven with Dusk. Adept is still ideal with Dusk, so you can simply look for Riven, Dusk units, and Adepts. Sharpshooters are another option, which you will want to find a sharpshooter chosen alongside a good frontline, which usually means Sejuani with Vanguards. There are a few other comps that you can go for that are a bit off meta, but are still good. Most of them, though, are reroll builds. Those are Nami Enlightened, Duelist, and Ninja Assassin with Zed carry. Playing reroll compositions means slow rolling during Stage 3 and 3-star your main carry. Alright, those are the general compositions to look for. As mentioned, you will primarily be looking to play either Talon or Ashe, since those are the two top carries at the moment. For the rest of Stage 4, you're either going to continue to slow roll gold and try to stabilize your board, meaning 2-starring your carry and other champions, or you can begin saving your gold to level to 8 in Stage 5. And with that, we move on to the late game. This stage of the game consists of the last few Stage 5 rounds, Stage 6, and everything past that. First, let's finish up talking about the mid-game with the early rounds of Stage 5. The early rounds of Stage 5 are around the time that you want to consider leveling to 8. If you had a good Stage 4, meaning you won most of your rounds and were able to save up gold, you can either level earlier than others to 8 right after Raptors on 5-1. If you had a rough Stage 4 and are still struggling to stabilize your board, you have two options. Either aim for a 4th place finish and keep rolling each round to get as strong as you can, or take a few bad losses and save up to level to 8 around 5-3. Knowing when to play for a 4th is an important skill to develop and is something you'll get better at the more you're able to do it. Now, we can properly move into the late game with the last few rounds of Stage 5. This is where you're going to begin to decide the general path that you want to take for the late game. What we mean by that is, are you saving for level 9, slow rolling on level 8, or going all in with your gold? Each of these depends a lot on your current board state, gold, and health. Anytime you're doing well in Stage 5, meaning you're winning rounds and are above 50 gold, you have far more options than other players do. This means you can save gold and either slow roll to 9 or slow roll for upgrades. On the other hand, if you're not doing well in Stage 5, then you're going to need to spend gold more aggressively, and level 9 is likely not an option. To talk about leveling to 9, let's move on to Stage 6. This is where the decision to level to 9 becomes available. If you did well in stage 5 and leveling to 9 gives you actual value, then you slowly spend your gold towards leveling and aim to hit level 9 a few rounds after Dragon. From there, you're simply looking to add in 5-cost champions like Ezreal, Yone, Azir, or Zillion and 2-star them. And if you didn't do well, it's time to roll during stage 6. The more health you have, the slower you can roll, but basically you have 2 goals: upgrading your current board as much as you can and trying to hit 5-cost champions to add into your comp. For example, if you have Adept, you want to try to fit in Yone as the 3rd Adept. Ezreal can be added when running Dazzler or Elderwood, and Azir is just an all-around strong option. The last option, whether you're leveling to 9 or not, is to try and 3-star a 4-cost champion. This is only doable if you know you're not being contested. Riven is one of the best for this, but Warwick and Morgana are also strong options. All in all, besides how you spend your gold, Sage 6 and beyond comes down to positioning and scouting. Make sure you're never caught off by obvious things like Zephyr, and make sure your backline is protected from assassins. Leveling to 9 should only be a goal if you can do it safely on your current health and you get a major power spike from being level 9. In all other cases, spend your gold and focus on positioning. That's going to be it for today's video, folks. A good portion of the meta does revolve around Talon and Ashe, but overall there are a lot of options available. Next patch should open up even more options and hopefully address the rather stale gameplay of the game being decided on level 7. Let us know in the comment section below how your climb is going in the last few days of patch 1022 and what you're looking forward to for patch 1023. Thank you for watching, and if you're enjoying our content, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for future Giant Slayer TFT videos.